Denzel Washington is not the type of guy to throw shade for clout. He's built his whole career on being respected, grounded, and speaking only when something actually matters. So when whispers started flying that he'd called out Oprah Winfrey for having deep ties to Diddy and, not in a flattering way, people stopped scrolling and started paying attention. This wasn't just gossip. This was Denzel, the man who rarely engages in Hollywood mess. So if he's side-eyeing, something must really be going on behind the scenes. Now let's rewind. Just a few months ago, Diddy was on top of the world, over-the-top parties, flexing yachts and Maybachs, and surrounded by a glittering circle of celebrities. But that all crashed like a house of cards when a flood of lawsuits hit him hard. The charges weren't your average celebrity scandal. They were the kind that make your skin crawl, things like extortion, sedating women, trafficking, even disturbing claims involving minors. Federal agents didn't waste time. They raided his homes across multiple states, pulling out boxes of evidence and confiscating footage so twisted that even investigators were reportedly disturbed. Then, out of nowhere, another name popped into the conversation: Oprah Winfrey. Yep, that Oprah, the media queen, the billionaire life coach to the masses, the woman who built an empire on compassion, empowerment, and personal growth. So when people heard she was somehow connected to Diddy, possibly shielding him or running in the same dark circles, it was like hearing that your favorite aunt had a secret double life. And here's where Denzel comes in. Behind closed doors, he's reportedly been uncomfortable with Oprah for years. Not over petty drama, but because of how she treats people when the cameras are off, especially black women in the industry. Two outsiders, Oprah and Diddy, might just seem like two icons who occasionally cross paths at award shows. But they weren't just surface-level acquaintances. They go way back. Photos, interviews, industry events. They've shared more than a few laughs and red carpets. In fact, Diddy's even been on Oprah's show, opening up about his upbringing and business moves while she beamed and nodded along. It looked like mutual respect. But if what's coming out now is true, that bond might have been built on more than just admiration. And it doesn't stop there. Oprah's relationships in Hollywood have always been strategic. There's a pattern. She aligns herself with people who hold power, and often, when they fall from grace, she goes radio silent. Take Harvey Weinstein. Oprah worked with him, praised him, hugged him like family in public, even as whispers about his predatory behavior spread. And when the allegations finally exploded, Oprah gave a vague speech about a watershed moment instead of naming names. Real smooth, but not very convincing. Then you've got Taraji P. Henson. She nearly walked away from The Color Purple, a film Oprah helped produce, because she was grossly underpaid. Sound familiar? Monique said something similar years ago. In both cases, these weren't women asking for handouts. They were award-winning talents asking for respect. And guess who always seems to be in the middle of these pay gap stories? Oprah, the woman who publicly champions female empowerment while allegedly lowballing black actresses behind the scenes. That's the duality Denzel seems to be calling out. On the surface, Oprah is the queen of empathy. But peel back a few layers, and there's a different story, one of quiet gatekeeping, selective support, and calculated alliances. And now, with Diddy facing some of the darkest charges in recent celebrity history, people are starting to connect the dots between those alliances. Denzel is not just speculating. He's allegedly pointing out a pattern that might be a whole lot more sinister than anyone imagined. Monique's story isn't just some old Hollywood beef. It's the smoking gun people keep circling back to when they question Oprah's true intentions. See, back in 2008, Monique sat down for an interview and opened up about one of the darkest parts of her life: being abused by her brother. It was raw, it was painful, and it was private. But what made it worse? She had already confided in Oprah about this trauma behind the scenes. So imagine her shock when Oprah went ahead and invited not just her brother, but also her estranged parents to the Oprah Winfrey show without giving her a head. That's not just tone deaf, that's betrayal, disguised as empathy. That move shattered the illusion for a lot of folks. Because if someone who built their brand on compassion could exploit someone else's deepest wounds for ratings, what else could she be capable of behind closed doors? Now fast forward, Diddy's name is everywhere. Not just because of parties and hits, but because of claims that sound straight out of a psychological horror film. Secret rooms, bizarre rituals, stacks of NDAs. Every week, a new layer gets peeled back. But what really shook people was when his former bodyguard, Gene Deal, started speaking up. He didn't just name Diddy, he brought Oprah into the conversation. He outed him. Diddy was part of a crew that included Oprah, Harvey Weinstein, and even Jeffrey Epstein. That's not a guest list you want your name on. Gene didn't mince words. He said these people didn't just cross paths, they ran together. Parties, business deals, and meetings that weren't always what they seemed. And honestly, once he said it out loud, a lot of things started making sense to people: the photos, the hugs, the public silence when things got dark. Suddenly, that just being professional excuse started feeling really thin. And it's not just bodyguards and former associates blowing the whistle. A long list of celebrities have had uncomfortable run-ins with Oprah's version of storytelling. Take Ludacris, for example. He went on her show in 2005 to promote the Oscar-winning film Crash. Instead of celebrating the work, Oprah pivoted to criticizing his lyrics, specifically his use of the N-word. And I think she should have. But later, Ludacris found out that all of his responses, defending his work, were cut from the final edit. They left in the criticism and took out his defense. It painted him as passive and guilty when that wasn't the full picture. Then there's 50 Cent, who openly called her out for pandering to a white audience while distancing herself from the black community. He went as far as calling her an Oreo black on the outside, white on the inside. Brutal. But a lot of people nodded in agreement. Because while Oprah has always preached about healing and representation, some of her decisions have made people feel like she's more interested in pleasing power structures than protecting her own. Ice Cube also had a similar experience. Despite decades of impact in music, film, and even political commentary, he was never given a platform by Oprah. Not for Barbershop, not for Straight Outta Compton, not even for his groundbreaking show, Black White. When he finally asked why, the answer was clear. His views didn't align with the narrative she was building. It's becoming harder to dismiss all this as coincidence. Too many stories. Too many patterns. And now, with Denzel reportedly calling attention to it all, people are starting to take a closer look at Oprah's empire. Not just the surface shine, but the shadows hiding underneath. Michael Jackson once welcomed Oprah Winfrey into Neverland, opening his gates and his guarded world for one of the most watched interviews of all time. He trusted her, led her into a space most people never saw. And for years, Oprah called that moment iconic, a symbol of their friendship. But that all changed. Years after Michael's death, Oprah made a very public shift. She hosted a televised special featuring two men accusing Michael of abuse, men who had previously testified under oath that nothing ever happened. It wasn't just a betrayal to his legacy. It felt like she cashed in on the controversy to boost her own spotlight. People questioned her motives. Why amplify those voices now? Why stand so firmly on one side when the facts were still up for debate? Critics weren't buying the "it's about awareness" argument. If it were truly about justice, why didn't she go just as hard on Harvey Weinstein? Why didn't she publicly grill the people she was pictured hugging on red carpets and partnering with behind the scenes? Then came the story of John of God. On her show, Oprah praised him as a miraculous healer from Brazil. She promoted him as someone who channeled divine energy to cure people of pain and trauma. But later, the truth surfaced, and it was worse than anyone imagined. He wasn't a healer. He was a monster accused of running a human trafficking ring, chaining up women, forcing them to give birth, and selling their babies on the black market. And what did Oprah do once the headlines exploded? She vanished from the narrative. Quietly deleted every trace of him from her platforms. No apology, no explanation, just wiped her hands clean and moved on. That pattern has become hard to ignore. Oprah throws her weight behind someone. If they crash, she disappears. But when the moment benefits her, she's all in, and this wasn't the only time her judgment raised eyebrows. Her elite South African school for girls made international headlines for its good intentions. But when a staff member was arrested for abusing students in the dorms, Oprah stayed mostly silent. The transparency and public accountability people expected never came. And again, the public started asking, is Oprah really the voice of justice or just the curator of her own image? The questions only grew louder when Seal, the Grammy-winning singer, posted an Instagram message aimed squarely at her. He suggested that Oprah had known about Weinstein's abusive behavior for years, but said nothing. The post went viral. And just 5 days later, Seal was slapped with a battery charge, one that was later dropped. But the timing was too. And it fueled rumors that Oprah had enough pull to make problems disappear. Or people. Even Cat Williams, never one to bite his tongue, chimed in. He claimed Oprah played chess with reputations and wasn't above silencing voices when they got too loud or too honest. It painted a picture of a woman who, beneath the polished image and spiritual quotes, was operating a tightly controlled empire, one where power wasn't just wielded, it was protected at all costs. And then there's Maui. When wildfires devastated the island, Oprah's properties emerged untouched while nearby homes burned. Instead of immediately helping with her own funds, she launched a fundraising campaign asking regular people to donate while she sat on hundreds of millions in real estate. It wasn't just the optics that were off, it was the message. Protect your brand, even when others suffer. So when someone like Denzel Washington allegedly questions her integrity, people are finally listening. Maybe it's time we all look past the surface. Maybe the truth about Oprah has been hiding in plain sight.